Hi, I'm Ros Jones with Jacksonville's Best Caregivers, and this is Dr. Charles Travis, who is the Chancellor, President, CEO of Aiton University. And today we're going to talk about long-distance caregiving. What's the importance? How do you stay connected? How do you not feel guilty because you're not there on a daily basis?
Correct.
You know, to take care of someone. So Dr. Travis has taken care of his mom, his brother, brother-in-law.
I have, yes, I've buried 6 members of my family over the last 18 months.
Wow.
So there was a lot of interaction with them and with family. And so this is something that's really, really dear to my heart, about caring for those that you love.
Well, I want to go ahead and get it started. Dr. Travis, when you were taking care of your mom, and this is huge for a lot of people, most of the caregivers in the United States are men, more than 50%. And, you know, a lot of times it's uncomfortable for a man to take care of their mom because of the intimacy, the privacy that they want to have. But for you, was it uncomfortable, you know, if you had to do that, or did you do that? Was it uncomfortable for you? And how could you help another man, say, you know, get past that barrier?
Well, I think particularly if it's a spouse, then I think obviously that would be different. If it's a mother, there's a little bit of tenuousness there, but I think again you can get past that. I think one of the things with me being I was the one that was a long distance from my mom, but we had family there. I had a couple of sisters, although one of those was the one that would have difficulty, you know, tending mom, but my older sister wasn't and didn't. But my mom looked after herself in her own house until she was, I think, 92 or 93.
Wow.
Because when she was about 91, we had my older sister and my younger sister and we had kind of said, well, let's get a place for mom and encourage her. So we talked to her about it, and as my mom would do often, she was sitting on the sofa and she'd pat the side of the sofa and she said, now, Charles, you sit down here. Now, she said, I'm okay. I'm not ready to go anywhere.
Right.
When I am ready, I know where I want to go, which home, which care center.
Okay.
And so we said, and she said, I'll call you when I'm ready. And so then about 2 years later, she called me.
Really?
And she said, I'm ready.
Wow.
But in that interim time, one of the things that I really suggest to those who are at a distance, because here's what happens sometimes, and for those who are near, please, you don't need to get jealous of those who are afar that your mom or your father is talking about a lot. Right. And so there's that piece. And that's something my family, there wasn't that problem, because sometimes they'd even call and say, look, you need to call and talk to mom, because I was normally talking to her at least once a week, sometimes twice. And then I'd also try to call with a video call. Okay. So whether Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, exactly. And that meant a lot to her, because then she could see. And I remember once I was in her room, and I was having a phone conference with someone in Europe, one of our clergy, and so I just turned it around and let this person talk to my mom, and they just chatted. Well, that gave her something to talk about for at least 2 weeks. Wow. Because she had talked to Bishop Tony Palmer, who was best friends with Pope Francis. Oh. And so they just chatted away, and so that was really, really good. But I would really encourage that kind of interaction. But you have what most of them need, and that is home care. And my mom had that too before she went into full-time care. How important was home care? How did that make a difference to help your sister, your brothers, to help all of you balance your life, knowing that someone was there? Well, all of my family, they are always doing, and they're working, and they got businesses and all of that. And even though they lived very near and they saw her every day, one or both of my sisters would see her every day, or 2 or 3 of the grandkids or great grandkids would stop by. So there was a lot of family there, and that's important. But home care is so different because they will do and tend to those things that the girls would maybe not think about. And you know, the pedicure,
right,
the manicure,
right,
the other stuff.
Going to the hairdresser.
That's
yes, right.
and now the girls will do her hair, but the other stuff they always didn't do. And I think as long as your loved one, mom, dad, grandmother, as long as they can stay in their own home, that's a positive thing.
Oh, that's a good thing.
So long as it doesn't, that they're not in harm's way. But again, see, a service like yours, and you know, this is something that's relatively new to this whole idea of aging, and that is home care on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
So that they can have a person that they know their home caregiver, you know, and so they build that relationship, and they look forward for them coming, whether they're staying overnight even or sometime during the day. That is so important because as long as they're around familiarity,
yes,
then that gives them a sense of wellness and a sense more of security than they have. But like my mom, and I think most people too, they know when it's time.
They do.
And sometimes we, you know, we kids, we need to park our emotions and say, now what is best for mom, or what's best for dad or grandmother, grandfather, because that's really, really, really important.
Sometimes as a long distance caregiver, people feel guilty because they're not right there. Did that ever happen to you? You felt like, well, I should be there more, or I should do more, you know, I'm not there like I should be, or should I move my mom here with me? You know, sometimes people feel guilty, or the parent may make them feel guilty because they're not there.
Well, and in our case, as I said, we had so many members of the family there, kids, grandkids, great grandkids, and mom was always just, you know, fully looked after. Me being the firstborn son, and being in the ministry, that mom always kind of looked to me as sort of the sibling patriarch after my father had died in particular. And so, but no, I don't think I always felt bad that I couldn't be there a lot, because I'd be, you know, as you know, I was out of the country about as much as I was in the country. But I would call her from out of the country. And I'd say, Mom, I'm calling you from South Korea, or I'm calling you from China, or I'm calling you from Africa. And so she'd want to know, well, what are you doing and what's going on? And so I think taking that kind of special attention to communicate, and you know, think of some of the favorite things you and your loved one would talk about or do, and talk about those. And particularly ask them about family members and get them engaged. And I think that's very important. But I know that there are some that do feel guilty.
Yeah, they do.
And I understand that. That's understandable. But if you can't be there, the next best thing is doing that FaceTime, doing that video call. And even if you talk about the very same thing
over and over again,
just talk about it as if no kidding, Mom, they did what? Well, they should already told you 40 times. But it needs to be first time.
It's first time probably for her.
Oh yeah, and sometimes it's first time for me, even though I've heard it 40 times. Because you know, now see, I'm the kettle calling the pot black.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be someone's going to be coming to me with some of this information here before long, because you know, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be 3/4 of a century old. So I'm stepping over into my 76th year. I'll be 75 by birthday.
Wow.
But
you look good.
Well, I won't say that. But
doesn't he look good, you guys?
But my mother was 97 when she passed.
I remember.
But I want to talk about that a little bit too, that advanced directive. Well, as I said, we really had mom's care because she looked after herself until she went into the home.
Wow.
But we had care come periodically during the week, and the girls were always checking on her. But we had already decided, and because you know, you're one of our chaplaincy graduates, and one of the things that we teach in our chaplaincy certification program is advanced directives.
Right.
And the importance of that. Well, when my mom was in care, she had a slight stroke.
Right.
And so they rushed her to the hospital. And what they didn't do was they did not send over her advanced directive files.
Uh-oh.
And so the day after maybe the afternoon she was admitted in the morning, she went into cardiac arrest, and they resuscitated her, and they weren't supposed to. Well, when I got there that night, and they told me what happened, and I went to the desk at the nurse's station, and had lovely care people. I mean, that's what they do. But they had her hooked up to everything under the sun. And so I said, could I see mom's advanced directives, please? And they looked in the file, and they said, well, they're not here. I said, well, you call the care center right now, and you have a courier bring them over right now. And you call her doctor right now. And of course, you know, it's a small town, and
right.
we know the doctor very well. So Dr. Roberts came in and apologized that they did not have him. But here's what was the interesting thing. My nephew and uncle came. You remember Uncle Don?
I remember Uncle Don.
Our chaplain,
yes.
who's with mom now.
Right. I remember.
Yeah. So he and his son were there in the room with her. And she came too. She looked over at Michael, and she said, she greeted him, and she said, you know, I died yesterday, and they brought me back, and they weren't supposed to do that. And she said, and so he's just a real quiet person. He didn't know quite what to say.
Everybody just took him back a little bit.
Yeah, and she said, and you don't let them do that again. And this is what's so important about advanced directives. The moment, and I know we don't always think about this. I mean, obviously they were doing what was best for mom medically. They rushed her to the hospital, but when they sent the files over, they did not send over advanced directives. And so they resuscitated her, which was not what she wanted. And she even voiced that. Don't let them do that again. And I think that's so important. The first thing you always find out from a loved one, if they're in hospital or if they're in care, make sure the advanced directives are there in the file. And what my sisters and I did, and brothers, we, you know, because I teach this kind of stuff, and you do as well. So they said, look, but tell us what we need to have. And so we made sure that was in her file. And so we got that over. And the interesting thing was, I'm sure they were panicking a little bit, because, but we said, look, stuff happens, and so let's don't worry about what was or didn't happen.
But from this point forward,
but now, let's be concerned.
Make sure.
So what they did, they immediately took all of that stuff off of her, and it's like she kind of lingered on for a number of hours, and the doctor said, you know, she's waiting for someone.
Wow.
And my sister said, well, I think she said, my goodness, Chuck has gone to get her baby sister at the airport right now.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And when she came in that evening and saw her, well, that morning, the next morning when she saw her, and that evening, Mom passed away. Aww. And we were all with her singing and just having a good time. And that's what's important, that they are comfortable. See, they really simulated hospice in ER for her, because they knew her time was imminent. So why take her to a hospice and create discomfort? And so we were all there about midnight, 12:30, I guess it was, and we just sang her on in the kingdom, gave her last rites, and let her go home to be with Jesus.
When you had to have the conversation with your mom, how did you start that conversation? So many people are afraid to have that conversation, or they won't have the conversation because they feel like someone's going to come in and just take all of my stuff. If I give you power of attorney, advance directive, you're going to wipe out my bank accounts, you're going to take my house away from me. You know, that's not true. So can you talk a little bit about how did you and your family sit down and talk to your mom about advance directives?
Well, there are a lot of other dangling participles. She owned her home,
right?
So that there was disposition of the home, and she was a clever girl, but there are people who what they have is their identity, and they're always afraid someone is going to take it away.
That's it.
And I think you have to do it incrementally, and you also have to look at, you know, beginning to talk with them and get the conversation going as to what's best for you.
Yeah, right.
And this home, there are certain things that has to be done before you can get into this kind of care,
right.
and that your income will cover that, and that they're not going to raid
right.
what you have.
Right.
So there's the two sides to that that equation, and so we talked to Mom, and really she was kind of instructing us.
That's good.
And so we were probably at a real advantage rather than disadvantage. But I know right now, I know some of very folks that are close to me that they're going through that with their parents, and they're not ready to go into full care, not even really assisted care, but they need being looked after.
Just someone in the house.
In a different environment than what they have been used to. And I think, as I said earlier, if you can stage that so that you've got home care coming, and that will be for a time.
Right.
And then you talk about, well, now you know you need full-time care, and that we're going to have to get a different location for that. And I think also, if possible, take them to visit some care centers.
That's smart.
And say, and here's what was neat about my mom. She had taught a Bible class in the care center that she went to,
so she already knew,
until she was 80 years old. For almost 15 years,
wow.
She had taught a Bible study there. And she told them when she left, see you later. And you know, they thought, well, I should come visit. But she'd already, in her mind,
knew
that was where she was going to come if needed.
So you were at an advantage
for very much so.
You know, because your mom really knew what she wanted, how she wanted it done. Some people may not be at that place.
Well, let me give you this. And here's what prepped us. My father had a stroke at 87.
Okay.
And he was in the hospital for a good long time. And, you know, Medicare and those kind of things, you have a limit. And so I had a chat with our doctor, and he said, look, he's not going to survive.
Okay.
And they were doing stuff, you know, giving him stuff. And I talked to my sisters, and I said, you know, we need to discontinue all this and let Dad pass in peace. And they were a little
apprehensive.
Yes.
Okay.
And a couple of even a brother-in-law was, you know, it's like, well, do everything you can. Well, no, you don't need to do everything you can if all you're doing is prolonging their pain. And so we did have that discussion. And so, and here's what was a part that was tough for me, because my dad, I went to see him, flew out to see him, and then came back, and then my sisters called me. They called me that he was passing, and so I was on the phone with the family in the room until he passed, and that was tough. And I remember flying out to do his eulogy on my birthday. Actually, was when we had his funeral. So it's been a while ago now. It will be in a few weeks. So we went through that slightly unprepared, and we had to make those decisions in real time.
Right.
if you don't have to make those decisions in real time, it's going to give everybody more peace. Do them. That's why they're called advanced directives. And they're so critically important for you, because what you're doing, you're honoring what your loved ones want. And they'll tell you, no, I don't want to be hooked up to everything and just kept alive. 99.9% of the people don't want that. And we want to honor them. We want them to have the best care they can get. But when it's time to step across that threshold, let's do it with honor, with grace, and with respect to their wishes. And so by all means, here is the person to help you with those directives, those advanced directives at that crucial time. And in advanced aging and caregiving, it's so important to have that. And I just thank you for what you're doing for so many people who need this kind of information and the kind of care that your company gives them as well. So that's the name of that too.
Dr. Travis has, like he says, in the past 2 years, buried 6 family members.
6 family members, mother, brother,
brother-in-law,
2 very significant uncles. My mother's, we lost 3 members of her family, her and 2 brothers, within a matter of about 8 months.
Wow.
And then my brother, of course, and then a very significant aunt.
And so, Uncle Don.
Uncle Don.
Everybody loved Uncle Don.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Uncle Don was a mentor to me, my mom's youngest brother, baby brother, and he was a prison chaplain until he was 84 years old when he passed. He was still a full-time prison chaplain. And here's what he always told us, didn't he? We'd say, well, how can we get started? He'd say, start where you are, use what you have, and do the best you can. And that's what you have to do. You have to start where you are with your loved ones. Use what you have, your common sense, your love, your care, documents, and then do the best you can. Yes. And God will help you do the rest.
This has been a great interview, because more than 60% of people in the United States don't have advanced directives.
Oh, that's incredible.
My goal is, behind Who Speaks for Me, is to make this, I don't want to call it a movement, I just want to make it an awareness that this is so important. We have had people like Terry Schiavo, who had to be on life support forever because her family had nothing, and then the court had to come in and decide. You don't want the court coming in and deciding.
No.
Because it may not be in your best interest, or it may not be honoring your wishes or respecting your journey.
Right.
Put this stuff in place not only to reduce your pain, but to reduce the pain of the family. Don't have them mourn twice. Don't have them go through more pain than whatever they have to do. Even with my mother and grandmother. My grandmother didn't have anything in place, and my mother and them were in probate court for a year. But we didn't know. Right. Because, my grandfather passed, and it was just, it was done. That was it. But, talking about advanced directives more than 20 years ago was not even heard of.
Well, it's also like cremation. For many, many years, particularly evangelicals and a lot of Christians, they somehow didn't believe in cremation, and because the costs of funerals have gone so crazy, even cremations now.
Right.
But there, with my family, both my father and mother were buried in a normal burial environment, but my 2 brothers were cremated.
Wow.
And I'm going to be cremated.
Okay.
Because I think it's simpler and easier on the family in many ways, but because it's our life and our memories that what's important.
That's going to stay here, other than a service.
But you need to know that about your loved ones. Do they want a traditional funeral viewing and all of that?
Oh, do they want to be donated to science? Some people, and if you want that,
absolutely,
that has to be done in advance. You can't wait until they pass to try to donate them science.
No.
In a lot of states, and in most states, if I'm not mistaken, you have to sign an anatomical release of the body. The funeral home, of course, would transport that body to the science facility. And usually after a year, they cremate the body and they ask you, do you want the ashes or do you want them to dispose of the ashes? So that's how it usually runs, but it depends on from state to state. What do you want? I know for my grandmother and my grandparents, and this was, well over 20 years ago, because she died on April 19th, 1995, which was the day of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Oh my goodness.
That's why I can remember it so well. And, she had already told us and had already put in place to be donated to science. And, a lot of times, particularly for cultures, different cultures, being donated was not, was like taboo, was, why, you're going to let somebody pick and stick and all this. But a lot of those taboos are gone.
Yes. Well, and I think too, even if, let's say someone is well known in their community and everybody would like to have a time for maybe a viewing, you can have a viewing and still be cremated. But the other thing is too, what I found with my brother, who was mentally and physically handicapped and very special in our family and extended family, and he was cremated. We had pictures all over the place, and we had his rocking chair that he always rocked in, and he was sitting right there with his picture sitting in the rocking chair.
Get out of here!
And so several went up and took the picture and sat in the chair and rocked. And so you can create those memorials and those memories. But the main thing is walking all of that through with your loved ones before and having that in writing.
Yes.
My mother wrote out her entire funeral before she ever died. Who was singing, what scriptures are to be read, who was preaching, myself and my nephew-in-law, and everything. She had it all written out. She said, I don't want anybody fussing. And so she just wrote it all out, didn't it?
And you followed it to the T, didn't you?
To the T.
Wow.
We didn't change anything.
Wow.
One of the songs was kind of corny, but we did it anyway. But,
oh, God.
But, I just think that's important for those that you serve, Roz, that they see the importance of the advanced directives. But it's more than just, unplug me. No, it's not that. It's all of these other things, pre-care, care, post-care. All of that is in there, and making sure they have a last will and testament and all of that, too.
So many people have talked about Aretha Franklin. And, nowadays, we have had the opportunity to, hear about, she never wanted to talk about her advanced directives or making but she planned for the funeral, but she didn't plan for the
advanced directives. So
now it's in court.
Yeah.
She sang about respect, but she didn't respect her family.
Right.
She kind of left them hanging.
Yeah.
She really did.
And probably, some people, they are afraid of even talking about their own mortality. And that's why, as family, you can begin talking about that way before and giving illustrations or sharing. Oh, by the way, did you know that Aunt so-and-so, she had everything planned. And we use Mom's story so much to tell people, look, not only did she took care of all the things before she went into care. All that was settled. Then she had advanced directives during care. And even at the end, she even planned her funeral. And so because, she others may not even want to think about that. But if you can talk about it, you can get them thinking about it.
That's it. So the thing is to start the conversation. This is not a cute conversation. It's not a fun conversation, but it's a conversation that has to be had. So from Dr. Travis's point, he talked to us about how they went through the step with their dad and how that taught them a lesson. How that taught them a lesson.
Absolutely.
And so, from, they say you learn from experience. Let all these experiences from different people, Terry Schiavo, Aretha Franklin, Justice O'Connor, Sandra O'Connor she has just announced that she has Alzheimer's and dementia. And so she's going back to Arizona where she came from to live. And, you know, she's starting to withdraw from public life, not doing as much things as public. But I feel like she has her stuff planned.
Oh, no, she's got her house in order.
Yeah. George Bush's wife that recently passed.
Yes.
She had, I trust and believe.
No, she was the matriarch.
Yes.
She would be telling them what to do. Not them suggesting to her what to do.
Right. So, you know, lead by example.
Yeah.
Who's going to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself, either on a temporary basis or on a permanent basis? Have the paperwork in place so that someone can be your advocate when you can't advocate for yourself.